Recording on this computer, the date is 10/23, 2019, and oh, some people are pointing at my uh, guys. I've been working a lot on this thing, and I think I think I'm going to try something that might be a little ambitious towards the end, and let's see how well we do on it. Let's wait till my monitors come up here. I wanted to discuss some things about that last little project. Now, I did not do the insert round. I left that up to you to do. The insert round, I think I said it need, well, okay, I'm not gonna second guess and tell you what it has to be. I think I would pass insert round um, to player IDs, and then I would look up the game ID from that. There's nothing though that says you can't look up the game ID and then pass that in. Um, I mean, there's no reason at all you can't. So if you wanted to do it that way, you could, but you'll need to get the game ID. Um, the users will know their round ID, and what we're going to look at is, well, we're going to look at how we're setting up this game to play. Right now, let's see, I wanted to, here. Okay, now we've have some setups here, and we've been talking about this for quite a while, and I've given you some pieces of it. This is really a pretty simple set of forms. And basically, it's got a start form of it. And from the start form, we can do insert new player, create a new game, play around, or exit. Probably I would add to that where we could view some statistics about what happened, you know, what's going on in my world. Those would probably be SQL views, create view. And we've talked about that. So I need some reporting capability to say what's going on. Who's the winner? What's the status of the game without giving away a whole lot of information, kind of aggregates. How many has such and such won? The things that upper management would want to see if this were a sales guy. Excuse me. I don't spend a whole lot of time formatting those. What I usually do is I just print them, I send them out in a view, and then I pick them up and drop them into Excel and format them there. Um, okay, so I can insert a new player, and my player ID is Smasher, and his name is Bill. And I haven't fooled with the password. I didn't put the password in, so it's not, that doesn't attach to anything. We could add a password to it, but I don't, it's just adds a little more complexity, and it doesn't really get us anything that I can see that's important. And so when I say insert player, I get that Smasher was inserted successfully. And um, it clears the fields afterwards. And I think that's good. When I'm done, I can go over and look at the table. And if I do a select from where on the table, I will see that Smasher has been added um, to the players table. And then I can insert a new game. And my insert, notice that I got Smasher showing up there. And these are these are my players. I've got Joe and Smasher. And I guess I ought to add another couple of players. Joe and Smasher are all I have. So Joe and Smasher can play a game. If I do that, I won't have anybody left. So maybe I ought to go back over and add another player. So if I go back, let's insert one new player. What?
You are gonna give that code to us.
No.
Because after I suffer doing
You suffer. Okay, well. Insert player, Sally was inserted. Now I can go back and now I should see that I got Joe and Sally and Smasher I can have games with. So this is, we talked about the code for this. I gave you the code for this. And the code is fairly straightforward. The code is the code that fills up a, well, there's two pieces to it. There's one piece that just simply takes the output and calls a procedure. And then this one fills up the combo box. So the two together give you pretty good coverage on most of the stuff. Okay. So we got combo box and we got just a call to a procedure from text boxes. Actually, it is fairly simple once you see what happens. Now, it's simple in that it's tedious. It is tricky because all of the little names have to match. All of the little names from the database have to match all of the little names in the VB. Specifically, the parameter names have to match. So if I talk about let's see, view, where's my code? Create game, if I right click and I go to view code. Now, it is not necessary that if you choose not to populate the combo boxes on load, you don't have to populate the combo boxes on load. You can just clear them and wait till somebody clicks them before you populate them. So you don't have to populate them on load. I populate mine on load. But you don't have to. You could change it different. You could have a button that says populate combo boxes if you wanted to. There's lots of ways you can do it, but the way you populate a combo box is pretty much the same. You have your connect string, and we're going to come back to this connect string today. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Then we create some things. We create the connection. We create the SQL that gets the players to put into that first combo box. It could come from a view. It could come from a select statement. This one comes from a select from a view. Public RPS players is a view. So this just selects the PID. That's all that's there. Then we set up the commands, and this is pretty much just a copy and paste. They're all pretty much the same. All combo boxes work, and you use combo boxes a lot. I Googled it, and there you see a whole lot of difference in it. So I went through it and tried to dig out the parts that I wanted to keep of it, and tried to understand it. So here's where everything happens. And we have our try catch right there. I always put a unique identifier in the output so that I can see where it's failing, where I'm falling through into that guy. So I put reference A, reference B, reference C. So I always have a different one for each failure point. Sometimes the failure is back behind where that was, but I want to know where I'm finally hitting that guy. So if all I see is cannot open connection, that doesn't tell me a whole lot. I want to know where it is, where to start looking for it. Then when this value's changed, we go back in again. This time I select from a function It's a table valued function. The thing I like about that is I have a function that takes a parameter and runs an SQL query and gives me back the pieces I want. So these are the possible opponents for the first player. They're everyone that is in the players table with whom he does not have a game. And I just had to figure out the SQL for that and create it's a little bit like a view, but it's a table valued function. All, let's look a little bit back where we've been. We started off in here and we talked about um, cursors. And we talked about how cursors, 4-letter word, but we're going to see them and come back again, and we're going to be using them a little bit. We don't like them because they are inefficient, and everybody who ever wrote a book on SQL says, don't use cursors. Why don't use cursors? Because you can usually do it so much better if you stay in SQL. And people tend to drop over and they want to write this loop when they could do it so much better and they could get the same output from an SQL statement in a third of the time. But anyway, we should know how to do it. And a cursor essentially treats an SQL statement as a sequential file. So it's a way to open it like it's a file, read from it line by line until I get to the end of the file. When I get to the end of the file, drop out, close the file. It's essentially just like a file. So if you look at what you have to do to open a file in C or Java or any other programming language, Pascal, what have you, you have to declare the file handle. I declare an identifier. Then I associate that with a data source, the file on the disk. In SQL, it's with a SQL statement. Then I open the file handle, read from it one line at a time. I have a way to detect when I get to the end of the file. It is exactly the same thing. And you see these things come around and around and around over and over again. So that's the idea of the cursor. Then we talked about creating procedures, creating functions. What else did we do? What's that? Triggers, we talked about triggers, and triggers are important. We talked about the idea of the loopback server, and a loopback server is important if I want a trigger to log something that has happened bad, assuming it's bad. Otherwise, why would I log it? Don't usually log things that are good. So something happens, I want to write it to a log, record that fact that it happened, and then I want to throw a database error. If I just throw a database error, I can write anything I want to write. As soon as my trigger throws a database error, everything I wrote turns into a pumpkin. Okay, so we have to have that idea of the loopback server. So it's in every database. In Oracle, they call it an autonomous process. Okay, but it's the same thing. I have to create something, cut it loose, kind of like a daemon in Unix, where you say, okay, you go, you keep running, and whatever happens to this code doesn't affect you. So you run until you get to the end. So this guy runs, he writes, he does the writing, and my server errors out, rolls everything back, except that which I turned loose on the loopback server. So that's an important point because I can't throw an error and write to the error log, which is what I usually want to do. So that's an important task. Then we talked about developing our application using procedures, and we have a pretty simple application. Rock, paper, scissors, it doesn't get any more simple than that. You say I've written that in a rock, paper, scissors TCP/IP server where it took us about 4,000 lines of code to write it. So anyway, it's something that, without getting bogged down in the rules of the game, I didn't want to worry about how we played the game so much as did we keep all of the data. So essentially we have three interacting tables and the error table. We have triggers on the table. You don't have to write a trigger for everything. I want to see some triggers. Um, I would probably trigger, I would stop you from, allow you to insert, and that was all. I wouldn't allow you to delete. I wouldn't allow you to update. I wouldn't allow you to delete, update, or insert, delete, update. What's one I'm missing? Alter the, what? Yeah, wouldn't allow you to alter the table. I mean, I'd trigger everything. But you don't have to do that. The idea is just to get a feel for how triggers work. The nice thing about triggers is I can do anything in a trigger. I can shut down the database. A trigger can run, a trigger can be owned by the system admin and fire, and I can literally tell you who did what, and it's they're very, very powerful items. Then we went over to Visual Basic, and in Visual Basic we have basically um, some forms, and the forms have a button on them. And when you press the button, something happens. So this particular one, when you push the button, it inserts the game. So the button is the thing that does the insert. And the combo boxes, when you change the combo boxes, they go to the database and fill themselves up. But when you finally select one and the other and you say, okay, that's the game I want to create, you press the button, then the game happens. The game calls the procedure. Procedure insert game. It is critical that those parameters match. If those parameters don't match, you will get for your reading pleasure a failure to connect. So the P1 ID, P2 ID has to match in name and type. They come from the combo boxes. The error level is an output parameter. It has to match in type. It has to be a tiny int, and its direction is output. Okay. And these guys are pretty much just a copy and paste. I mean, you got to change this stuff right here. And then finally, it all happens here. It executes. And when it finishes, we have some stuff that we show the user some beautiful output. What you decide to show the user is your call. You can send it out in a label. You could send it out in a text box. You could send it out like this. I mean, there's various ways you can do it. And so you can use if then else logic. It's fine as long as you get some output out there. I chose to have an array of strings because I just wanted to fiddle around with them, and then I just kind of kept them, and each one I just kind of copied over. So anyway, this guy runs pretty well. Back button goes back to the show and closes this one. And we can look at play round. Okay, play round has a couple of things about it. Number one, it's got two combo boxes. Okay, what are the differences in those combo boxes? The first thing is that the combo box 1 is simply the same thing as it was in the other one. Combo box 2 is not the possible opponents, but the actual opponents. So it's everybody that would have been in combo box 2 of the other one, but it's the opposite of them. It's those that are not in that one. So you can just flip it around and take where it is not in and get about the same thing. So the active opponents, the only thing is if I put the player fee in, the fee is not going to appear as player 2 in either one. But let's see if I have 3 players, I have Fee, Fi, and Fo, and player Fee is in a game with player Fi. If on the first one, on the create game, when I do it, I would see, if I selected player Fee, I would see Fo because he's the player I'm not in a game with. On this one, if I selected player Fee, I would see player Fi, the second player, the one I am in a game with. Isn't much difference. You just need two table valued functions. But all in all, they're pretty much the same. Let's go to view the code. When you do the when you do these guys, the rock, paper, scissors, radio buttons tend to vary a lot between programming languages. For example, this one is Visual Basic. The way Visual Basic does radio buttons won't necessarily be the same, exactly the same, as the way some other visual language, Java or Visual C or something, will do radio buttons. Oracle Forms, for example, they'll do they're radically different one to the other. In general, you have a couple of things that have to happen when you have a radio button set. You have, well, radio buttons, right? Rock, paper, and scissors. They have names. So each radio button has a name. There are 6 of them up there. Then there are 2 radio button groups. Selecting a radio button in a radio button group, so I have player 1 and player 2 up there, is mutually exclusive, meaning that you select one, you can only select one value from within that group. Now, lots of these environments, a radio button group is an object that you grab from your toolbox and drag over to the to your canvas, and then you add radio buttons to it. And that's one way that is commonly done. So the radio button group is what has the value. Now, this particular one isn't quite that sophisticated. I like that a lot better. Personally, I like to have this radio button group called, RBG player 2 would be these guys. I guess I should point with the mouse because people can't see me pointing with my finger. So RGB, this would be player 2's, and he would have one value. It would be either rock or paper or scissors. That would be the value of the group. If I wanted to add more, I could add more to it. Doesn't work that way in Visual Basic. In Visual Basic, you put a frame on your canvas. So I have a frame. You see this little frame, little square box? Okay, so I add a frame to the canvas, then I drag radio buttons onto that frame, and they become grouped by virtue of the fact that they are in the frame. If I took it out of the frame, it would no longer be in the group. Only one of those buttons can be checked. So if I check one button, the others have to all be unchecked. That's a property of radio buttons. It just works that way. Let's look at the code. So when something changes, okay, here's one. RBP1 rock checked changed. RB radio button player 1 rock check changed. What is that talking about? That would be, let's see, this is player 1, that's rock. So when he gets changed, when he changes from checked to unchecked or unchecked to checked, it triggers this event. Okay, So what happens there? If rock is checked, is true, then P1 is a variable. And P1 is a variable, let's see, I believe it's up here. P1, it's a class variable. It's at the top of everything. So it's outside of all of the procedures. So it's it's not a global variable, but it's a form variable. It exists at the form level, not inside of the subroutine. And he takes his value. So when he's changed, if it's rock that's checked, then P1 gets R. Now, if rock changed, that meant that something else had to change too, right? Because I got to have something checked. So whichever one it changed. So for example, if paper is checked, then P1 becomes P for paper. If S is checked, it becomes, so something's got to be checked. That means that two things had to change. Now, I suppose I could have clicked, if it didn't change, then not a big deal. Some radio button groups will allow you to select nothing. Some radio button groups have a default value that you can give them, and some don't. So this one is fairly simple. This is kind of how it's done. I just have this subroutine that says that when it changes, so my button groups are a button group by the fact that I put them inside of a frame that causes them to be grouped together. If I moved one out of one frame and into another frame, then one would have 4 and the other one would have 2 radio buttons. Doesn't make any sense to have one radio button. I mean, it's the only one you could have. So sometimes you can hide, sometimes you will hide a radio button and make it be invisible and make that be the default value that where you're not allowed to check it, but as soon as you choose something else, it stops being that. And there's a lot of different things you can do with them. I don't know. These, I don't like the way these run. Player 2 runs the same way. I've got, the subroutine RBP2 rock checked change. When that's the other one. When it changes, that variable changes. Okay. What about the rest of it? This combo box, when the first player, player 1, the one on the left, changes, the one on the right changes. Well, the one on the right does this. The one on the right selects a new group of players. So they are exactly the same thing. It uses exactly the same code of the insert games. Exactly the same logic. The only thing we've added to it is the radio button group. Nothing really to it. And we can see how it runs. Let's see it. So I'm going to play around. Joe, I have R, and Echo 2 is showing, I haven't selected anything from player 2. I guess I probably put that player 1 selecting rock. That's probably in my load. I don't remember, I wrote this some time ago. So I probably will find in on load that it sets that checked true to rock, just because to make it be something. And Joe, if I want to change, I got Joe and Sally and Smasher. Don't have any games for Smasher. How about Sally? No, all I got's Joe. I haven't connected. Okay. Okay. Oh gee. Oh, I got it. I'm still debugging. I didn't actually get. That's one of the things you got to watch for in your Visual Basic. You will keep running. It is notorious for keeping running, and you're going, "Well, why isn't my thing running?" And you find that, well, I'm still okay. So start. Let's play around, Joe. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Have a game. Joe and Sally are going to have a game. So now Joe and Sally have a game. Now I should be able, I can go back and I can play around. So Joe and Sally now have a game, and we'll see them there. So Joe chooses, I don't know, paper, and Sally chooses, what does she choose? Rock or scissors? She's probably going to choose scissors since she can see. Which makes the game kind of silly, really. When I execute the game, say I put these values down there as labels so you can see what they are. I would probably hide those. You don't need to see them, but I just wanted to see them happen. So that's where I'm taking the value. So I'm taking this Joe is one of my parameters. Sally is another of the parameters. Using those two, I will derive the game ID. And then the tokens will be P and S. And so when I say execute game, Joe versus Sally, Joe chose P, Sally chose S. I could have put some graphics in there, you know, maybe a picture of scissors chopping up paper or something like that. A little bit of, stop it. A little bit of flash never hurt anything. Yes, just because you can do it doesn't always mean you should. Keep it simple is good. There's nothing wrong with that. Notice that I said Sally wins instead of saying player 2 wins. I think that's a nice little touch. I'm more interested in the functionality of it. So where do I determine the winner of it? In the form. That's all done in the form. I don't need to go to the database to tell you who won a game of rock, paper, scissors. I don't have to send all that stuff to the database and come back with an answer. I'm not going to store the winner. It's too easy to calculate the winner on the fly. So I'm just going to, all I'm storing are the plays, the dates, who did what, the game ID, and stuff like that. So I should be able to go find those and let's see, paper and paper or paper and rock. Let's see, execute game. And now Joe won that one. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Now here's what I want to do. Here's our last piece of this part of the class, and we'll have a pretty complete game. I want to add a user. Okay. Now, get it running with your regular user first. So your user, you have a user, it's you. And your user is the owner of those tables. Your user can grant access to the procedures. So the user can grant execute on the procedures. For example, I'm going to go, if I go and log in as the SA user, I log in with Windows authentication. Okay, I can create a user. I can't create a SW Smith or Juana or whatever can't create a user because we're not the system administrator. Now we could grant ourselves the right to create a user from the system administrator, but why? We've got the system administrator. It's really easy just to log in with Windows authentication and boom, we are now the system administrator. I can create a user. So I create a public user. Okay. I want you to create a public user. I want your public user's name to be I'll write this down and send it out. Your public user's name is public user, spelled like that, because I'm going to create a user called public user. Now on this one, I want to know the password that you are using for public user, because since I'm going to, when I'm testing your code, I'll put this out in writing for you, Juana. When I'm testing your code, I'm going to use this username and this password. So I want you to create, when you create your user, I want him to have that username and that password, so that when I log in and I say connect as public user with the password fishbait, I'm connected. And what I will do, and to test it, you should change, just one letter's fine, change your password, the password that you were using, change it, add a X to the end of it or something. And that won't work anymore. So anything that's broken needs to be fixed. Okay, how do I do that? Well, public user. Let's look at the properties of public user. Public user has a default database. I make public user's default database be RPS DB. Now, I still want you to have use RPS DB everywhere, but you won't have to do that because that's now his default database when he's a rock, paper, scissors player. Okay. Okay. I want to go to user mapping. User mapping, users mapped to this login, RPSDB, public user is a user of RPSDB. Public user is an authorized user of RPSDB. He or she is allowed to connect to it. His role here is public. That means he doesn't own anything. He can't see anything unless you give him that right to see it. Server roles. Server role is public. Has no, can't own, he can't create a table. He doesn't own a table. He doesn't know anything about a table. He doesn't know anything about your tables. Now, what is he allowed to do? Who is this user right here? This is SW Smith. This is me. I'm the owner of that procedure insert player and procedure insert game and procedure, etc., etc. Okay. I'm going to grant execute on insert player to public user. That means that public user can execute my code. Public user cannot, now let's go back over to, let's go to public user. Here's Mr. Public User. Now, Mr. Public User can insert a player only because he has the right to execute that code. And the way it's called is the call has to change a little bit. It's RPS, it's the database, the schema, database owner, and that, so it's got to have those two guys at the in front of it. I can't just say PROC insert player. I have to say the because it's the database owner that gave him the right to execute that code. So when he or she or whoever it is executes that code, notice he got a 0 back from it. Now, what can he not do? Well, he can't do any darn thing else. He's already turning red. He can't go and see from players. No such animal. You can't look at it. You're not allowed to see what's in there. I think it's, I don't think they should say it was denied. I think they should just say, hey, it doesn't exist or something's wrong, you know. They don't have to tell you it's denied. That's giving him too much information. Don't give him any information at all. Okay. You're not even allowed to know what you're not allowed to do. But you're allowed to know what you are allowed to do. Couple of things that I have to have here. Now I should have some views where public user can find out some stuff that he is allowed to find out. What you decide to let him find out, that's okay, but he can't see the tables. That's the important point. If you want to create a view that shows everything, well, okay, that's fine. That's your choice. That's your decision. That's your operational decision. I would create some views. Now he has to have. Let's see. What's views? Databases, RPSDB. I think I am. Okay, public players. Here's a view. DBO public RPS players. I don't like using the square brackets. So RPS, I'll need to put that at the front of it before I can, got it? All right. And now what is this? This is a view. Out of the goodness of my heart, I have to, because this user cannot run the create game without being able to do that. So on those two functions, I think he will have to have execute on the function and select on the function. So what I can give on an object, the ones that are typically given are on a table or a view. I can give you select. On a procedure or a function, I can give you execute. If the function is a table valued function, I have to give you execute and select on it before you can use it. If it's a table, I can give you update. I'm not about to give you update. In fact, I've got a trigger stopping anybody from updating. So this is really my first level of defense. This is my primary level of defense is I'm not going to give anybody any access. You have to get through, you first have to get into the database, and I'm only going to let you into the database just far enough to where you can execute stuff. So you get to run the stuff that's on the web server. So you can go to the web server and you can run the Visual Basic stuff, and you can pop up this wonderful little screen that says insert player. And therefore, this this user, which is public user, if public user's credentials are in that, so this is the web server user, by the way. So whoever comes in, they walk in and they, oh, that sounds like a groovy game. Let's play that game all night. So they log in, they come into the web server, and they get this screen. And they say, oh, I think I'll create a user. So they create a user. What does it do? It logs in with the public user. Okay, what if they break through that and they get that credential? They know the password. Oh no, but they can't do any real damage. They can't do any more damage than they could have done from the, because I just give them just enough rights to use the so that stuff is going to be in there in the web page. So if I change the, let's see it change. I'm going to make a change to it right now. Let's see, what is this? Let's go to the insert player. That's the easiest one. And at the insert player, right here, I've only got one place to change it. The others, I have to change it several places. Okay. The user ID changes to okay. Make sure I'll send the credentials exactly the way I want it. The password, we'll copy and paste it from here. Now, start. I'm going to be embarrassed if I get a failure to connect. I'm really going to be embarrassed. I think it's going to work. I'm going to insert a player. Roger. Ramjet. Okay, dare I? I'm not I'm connecting through, it's connecting through the player, and that's the way it should be. This guy does not have he has to have a username. He has to be able to connect to the database, but that's all he gets to do. He gets to connect to the database, and all he gets to do is run that code. So when I go to let's see, that particular one is the easiest one to do, because that particular one is just, all I need to do is grant execute on the procedure that updates the table. Now, when we get over to the create game has a view that you have to have select on the view, all players or whatever it is, public players, or whatever that view was. So you have to grant access, and now the user, let's test him and see, public RPS players. So we have granted him the right to do that. So now if we go over to public user, I'm in public user, and don't know why it's red. Shouldn't be. I've just been granted the right to select from it. Let's see. Permission denied. Okay, let's go back here. Grant select. We'll take that off. So I didn't use it up here, so I guess I'll try it without it. Let's see, this is supposed to execute. I am S.W. Smith, and it says that my grant succeeded. So I should be able to go over here. Now I should be able to do this. And it did work because I granted him the right to do that. Now he can't, so the rights that you can have on an object, it's grant, something, grant select from, grant insert into, grant delete from. One that I don't want to give is alter. That allows you to change it and allows you to write a new program. That's kind of bad. If I get mad at you and I don't want you to have any more rights on it, I say revoke whatever rights, and I can say revoke all privileges on the database from Juana, if I'm mad at her. And now that takes them all. There's other things you can do. You might want to research what we call a role. Do you know what I'm talking about, a role? So I can create a role. This role is called the RPS player role. And I say, okay, if you're an RPS player, you have to have what? Execute on the insert player, insert game, insert, go ahead. A role. Let's play a role. Role playing. What does that mean? Okay, I'll play Superman and you play the villain. We're playing a role. Acting, perhaps. So a role, if your role in this organization is janitor, for example, you have access to the closets where we keep the cleaning supplies, but you don't necessarily have access to the company safe. Okay. If your role is president of the company, you probably have access to the company safe, but they probably wouldn't give you access to the janitor supplies. Why? You don't need them. You're not going to be out there cleaning the floors. So a role is I would give you those rights, give the role those rights that what we call them privileges in database, but whatever, they're the same thing. So you have the right to execute. I always keep an eye on it. So you have a right to execute insert player. You have a right to execute insert game. You have a right to execute insert round. You have select on the views that you need. You can use the functions that you need. Grant those. And then I say, okay, Juana is an RPS player. I grant RPS player to Juana, and you just get them all. It's a nice way to keep track of them. We're going to have RPS player is going to get them. If you want to use a role, if you want to research that, you can, or you can just give them directly to the player. But I want to pull them out of the public where this is now running in a more secured mode. So if you think about it, think about how many layers of defense we have here on this database, on these data. If they are, if these were valuable, and all data are valuable, that's we practice that all of the time. So our data are valuable, or even if they're not, we're pretending they are. So we have the initial layer of defense that we don't give out the password. The password isn't on the web server. Then if you do get onto the web server, all you can do is execute the procedures. The procedures are checking everything. And they'll let you play the game. Okay, wow, I can play the game. Whoopee. I suppose you could do a denial of service and you could fill up all my tables with junk. But I mean, I could detect that happening. Let's see, then I have the procedures are checking it, the triggers are checking it, the table constraints are checking it. So it's being checked. I've got the overall password protecting me, the fact that the user that's logging in does not have high privileges, the Visual Basic is somewhat of a protection, a little bit. I try to keep you out of the database itself, but given that that Visual Basic is going to be running on your computer, you'll probably break through into that pretty quickly if you're any good. So you're going to get that password, and you'll probably gain access to the server, even though I'll try to keep you out. I'll have it firewalled and everything, so you have to come in through the Visual Basic server, but you know, firewalls are compromised. That's why we don't like, database people hate web servers. Why? They're easily knocked over. They're very easily compromised. So we try to put as much stuff between us and that web server as we can. Then when you do get in, still all you can do, you're still just connected with a very low privileged account, and I can detect that account through a trigger. I can detect where you're logging on from. So if you're coming from some other IP, I can pick that up in the trigger when you log in. And say, whoops, wait a minute, I need to shut this down. Somebody is playing games with us. So we've got quite a few layers of security here. Questions? Now this will be our, probably about as far as we can go with this idea, except. I'm going to write this up for you. So this will be the, let's see, how many more weeks have we got? About 3 or 4? 4 more meetings, I think. 3? Well, we don't meet over Thanksgiving. 3 or 4. It's not 5, I'm sure. I'll look it up. Anyway, I want this will be the semester project. You're going to submit everything. I want your SQL code from start. I'm going to go from a completely clean SQL. I'm going to dump everything and install and run all of your scripts. Then I'm going to run Visual Basic with your code and with that user. So I'm going to create that user with that password, fishbait, whatever it was. You don't have to create the user with SQL. I'll create the user. Everything else should run. I would go ahead and use the database name RPS_DB. That will simplify. If you change that, it might break something. Everything else should run. Okay, then I'm going to start from scratch, clean slate, install, and go. Okay, when I grade it. And so basically that's where we're at now. Actually, it's not that difficult of an assignment. It really isn't. Now, where are we going from here? What's the Achilles heel of our game? Our game is what?
You said that it has to be able to be from 2 different computers.
I said that in order to play our game, you have to come over to my house, and we have to sit down at my computer, or I go to your house, we sit down at your computer, and we all play on the same computer. We come in here or something, right? The insert round, I mean, inserting the game is fine. Creating a player is fine. I can create players, whoever wants to create a player can create a player, one user. One user can create a game. I might reserve that for a quasi supervisor. I might, hold that back a little bit. But by and large, I don't really care if you create a game. Now, the problem is that the playing the round, which is really the meat of playing the game when you get right down to it, happens synchronously. That means that we have to sit down and I select a game. Well, if I select first, okay, you go first. You go ahead. So you go first and you select scissors. I'm going to select rock. So I'm always going to win. Whatever you select, I'm going to select the one that wins. Unless you go first, and then you'll select the one that wins. So, I'm just saying that it doesn't make much sense to have a game that's an asynchronous game that's played synchronously. Okay, how do we do that? And this is where it turns into a real bucket of worms and where we're going to have to do some research. I want you to get your synchronous game running first. You don't have to spend a tremendous amount of, I don't want you to sit there and write triggers for everything. You don't have to do that. I just want, demonstrate a trigger for me on a couple of things, and that'll be fine. You don't have to fuss over every little detail. There are so many little details here that you can spend the rest of your life on them in just this one game. You'll almost never see a Visual Basic program that doesn't have a few bugs in it. I mean, it's practically impossible unless somebody has spent an awful lot of time getting them all out. Now, where do we go? All databases. What time is it? 7:08. Anybody need a bathroom break? You guys online okay? Because I wanted to. Everybody okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep on going, and I'm going to wrap up here before 10 o'clock for sure. Juana's looking at me like, you better. Okay. All data, well, okay, not all databases. Databases that are of any real use, meaning Oracle, particularly Oracle, and SQL Server, like they will all have an autonomous process or a loopback server somehow because it's just something you have to do all of the time. They have what they call event notifications. An event notification is a way that one user can communicate to another user on the database that something has happened, or a user on the database can find out that something has happened. Now, I don't propose to be an expert here. I am kind of in a little over my head on this because I was up till 2 o'clock this morning, working on this stuff. I still didn't go to sleep. I went to sleep and I was dreaming about SQL, trying to figure out how to get this running, okay? And I did. I got a piece of it running. And two users can communicate. So one user can say to the user, hey, I'm user one, user two, here's a message. User two can receive the message, do something with it, and send me back a message says, yeah, bite me, or whatever you say. I mean, you say, yes, thank you, 10-4, good buddy, I got it. I guess kind of like the CB radio of, that's going to go over most people's head here. Okay, so you can communicate. I'm going to demonstrate how that works. Basically, I just have a very rudimentary bouncing communication happening, but I am able to do it, and that took me all night just getting it. But I had to Google a whole bunch of stuff and go through, and then I had to go through a bunch of it and try to winnow it down into something that was usable for us. But basically, what I think I see happening is a player of a game will execute a play round form. Okay, so the player of the game selects the game, and I want to play a game, and I choose Sarah and I are in a game. So I sit down and I open my screen and I choose a play, rock, paper, or scissors. That goes from my system would look at the database, and I will have a table there called pending. Pending is where a half play goes. A turn. No, it isn't finished yet. So it goes there, and then I think the way I'm going to try to work it, I'm going to send Sarah a message and say, hey, maybe I will, maybe I won't, I don't know. When Sarah gets ready to play, Sarah will check I checked the pending table. There wasn't anything there on this game ID. So I made my play. I chose rock or what. I'm not going to tell you what I chose. I chose something. So I got my game ID, round ID. I get the round ID with that, and I put that into this pending table. Sarah, and then I wait for you to do something. I'm just waiting. Sarah comes along and she's finally ready to play. She's been getting a cup of coffee and she plays. Her system, her client, checks the pending table, finds that half finished game in there. It's there. Her client is the one that does it. She doesn't see it. She can't see it because remember, she can't get to it because she's connecting as public user. So you can't see what's in that table, but your procedure can take your play and finish it off, insert it into the database and send me a message that says, hey, complete. Now I would have a view, or we would both have a view or something where we could see what happened. Kind of like our grades, and I can see my scores, you can see your scores, but I can't see yours. I know I won that round or lost that round, or it was a tie, one of the three. Okay. Okay. Now I've got it where I'll give you this code. You're going to have to help me do some research here and see how this is going to work. I don't know how it's going to work. I know how it works in Oracle. Oracle is a whole lot easier to do than SQL Server, or I don't know, maybe just because I've programmed in Oracle for a long time, and I'm not really a SQL Server guru, but they all do this, or all of the big databases do this. They all give you a way to communicate. So I'm going to show you how the communication works. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I don't need that. Don't need that. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is connect. I'm going to connect with Windows Authentication because I need to set some things up before we start. And I haven't figured out exactly how I can run my procedure. My procedure can be owned by the system administrator. Excuse me, get hiccups. My procedure can be owned by the SA, and it can run as the system administrator. I don't like doing that just because it's dangerous. If it goes wrong, something goes wrong, it really goes wrong. But right now I'm going to be Windows Authentication. So I'm going to connect. Okay, I'm going to give you this code. Here's a discussion of it. This is where I found most of my information, or I found usable information here that was very good at this server service broker example on how to send and receive messages. It is a treasure trove of very simple information that tells you, it doesn't always tell you what it's doing. It says, do this, then do this, then do this. And then, so I went through it and then and stripped out all the fluff out of it. Okay. So that's where I'm getting my information. Now, some things have to happen. I connect to sysadmin because I'm going to create a database, and I create my database I created is EN testing, event notification testing. So all I'm doing with this database, I'm testing this event notification. One of the things about this guy is that he tends to, anything that you misprogram or fail to do, if you fail to clean stuff up, you leave crap running. So every so often I found that I had to stop, go back, bounce the database, in other words, go into the server, shut down the database, bring it back up again, and restart everything, and just drop the database and redo it. So I would have to drop the database into testing, then I would have to delete my files, and then I'd create the database again, and that would solve all of my problems. After a while, it starts slowing down because you get a lot of conversations going, and sometimes they don't get taken care of. It took me a while to figure out how to say, okay, I'm done. Over and out. Checkmate king 2. This is white rook. Over and out. Okay. Create the database. So there's my database created. First thing I have to do is I have to enable the service broker. The service broker is a service that runs on the database that is essentially affecting the communication. It has to be turned on. I suspect that most of this stuff is fairly expensive in terms of database performance. It has the sound of stuff that is, well, I know it is because I watched my database slow down fairly radically when I got a bunch of conversations running accidentally. Go. Anytime I create or alter, I always have a go. Create the message types. This is the message type that I'm going to be sending back and forth, and it's an RPS init message. So I'm going to send that to you, and you're going to send something back to me, or vice versa. I don't know how it's exactly going to work, but this is the initial message that I send to you, and then you can reply, and it is XML. And so I'm just saying that when I send it to you, I'm going to send it to you as XML. Validation is check that it's well formed as XML. And so here's an initial message. I say, hey, and you say, what? Okay, and then we can communicate with the initial message init and the replies. So this is the type. If I create one of these, I can send it to you. Create the contract. The contract says that the init message is sent by the initiator. The reply message is sent back by the target. Okay, I just have to do all this stuff. It's over there in that file. You can go read the file and see how it works. I create the queues. The queues are where the messages are kept until I finally get around to going and reading them. So I create the a queue for the person who starts sending to send it to, and I create a queue for it to go to. Start the services, and I'm ready to go. I put this in here. I'm not real sure what it means. Notice that this one, the the target service has a contract with it, but the initiator does not. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, I need to do a little more research on that. So I'm not real sure what all of these things are doing, but if I do all of these things, I can send and receive messages. If I skip one of them, I can't. So I've done them all. And I say, run the damn thing up a flagpole and see if anybody salutes it. Okay, here's the procedure. That procedure is, I call it PROC, message, process message. Okay, it has a message body. It is XML, and that is an output parameter. Okay, so XML, extended markup language. Basically, it's just text, pretty much. And then I have a tiny int that is yes or no, meaning I'm going to use that to say, am I sending the message or receiving the message? Begin. No count on. Okay, I start off with this. If send, this guy, is 0, that means I'm going to send a message. If he's 0, if he's 1, I receive the message. No, if he's 0, I'm going to receive the message. If it's 0, I'm going to wait for somebody else to send me a message. Okay, so I declare some stuff. I set my timeout to 1 minute, 6,000 milliseconds. That's 1 minute. So if I don't get a message from you in 1 minute, I'm going to call it, I'm not going to get one. And I'm just going to go away. 1 minute's plenty of time. And so let's see, I have some other variables here that I have a reply message. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this reply message, but we'll find out as we go through it. I have a while loop. The loop is forever. You see that okay? While loop, loops forever. Okay. Here's one that we're going to have to talk about in more detail. Transactions. We need to talk about transactions in this class. A transaction, I could have written it out as transaction, is just tran or transaction. It's things that have to either all happen or none of them happen. If I get into an airplane, I want it to, if it takes off, I want it to land at an airport. It either both happens or neither of them happen. If I move money from one account to the other, I debit my savings account, I credit my checking account. I either want them both to happen or neither of them to happen. They have to either go or fail as a block. And that's essentially what a transaction means. Put it together as a block. It either goes or it fails. All of it happens or all of it doesn't happen. A trigger is a transaction. Once that trigger fires, it either all works or it all fails. This is the wait. I say wait. Get the message off of the queue from the target queue. There's the timeout. I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. Something happens. I either get the message or I don't. Something happens and I come out of there. I check the row count. If the row count is 0, I didn't get a message. If it's 1, I did. So then all I do is say, hey, the timer expired, no message. Or I print notification received, and I tell you what you sent me. That's what I got. So you probably sent me a game ID or something like that. Okay. Breaks the while loop. Commit the transaction. So from where it says begin the transaction to commit, if there's anything that happens in there bad, we roll back and none of it happened. Okay, meaning we leave the messages in the queue. Okay, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll see. Okay, now end if send is equal to 0. Now down here, send is not equal to 0. It's something else. Here I'm going to send a message to you, and you're going to do something with it. I declare something, transaction, begin dialogue. Okay, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. From service, the initiator service to the target service. I don't know why. One of them is in quotes and one of them isn't. I leave that to you to research. I'm not sure what that's doing here. On the contract, game contract, remember, that's where we said what kind of messages we're exchanging. Encryption encryption sounded like it was really going to make things a mess. So basically, before I turn on encryption, I'm going to get it running. Send the message. Send the message. Message body. Message body. What's the message body? Message body is, excuse me. Message body's up here. It's a parameter to the function. When I call you, I pass that in as a parameter. It says, hey, what's up? Send you the message body. And this was the one I was forgetting, end conversation. In other words, okay, we're done. If you don't end the conversation, these conversations continue to stack up and stack up and stack up, and they slow you down. And finally, we have a commit the transaction. Commit says, make it happen. Before it happens, nothing else can see that it has happened. So if you in a transaction and you insert something into a table, nobody else can see that insert until you commit. End. And let's see how it runs. Okay. Let's see. I will open message test. This one says execute process message. I don't have a message to send. 0 says I'm going to wait to receive a message. So when I start this one, I'm going to wait. This one says send a message. I'm going to send you test message with a 23. Assumably the 23 would be a game ID or some information that you needed to get from me for some reason. I don't know why you need to see 23, but I just thought I should put something in there. 1 if by land and 2 if by sea, if you're familiar with American history. So if I go over to this guy and I execute him, boom. What's the matter with you? Boom, I said. Now I'm running. Now I'm running. I don't know why I was. Okay, so it looks like I'm just frozen. Actually, the timer is counting down. So I have 1 minute to get a message, or if I don't get the message, I'm going to say timeout and I'm going to quit. Over here, this guy, I don't know why this does that, execute this, he sends a message to the one that's waiting. Let's go back and look at the one that's waiting. The one that's waiting has now said, I received a notification, the test message is 23. Now that one happened to be, we happened to be on one computer, but one of us could have been here and the other one could have been in New Zealand. And as long as we were connected to the same database, we would have received the message. Ideally, this would be used to pause one system. So I can set my timeout if I set it to let's see, 6,000 seconds is a minute. So if I set it to 30,000 seconds, no. 5 minutes would be 30,000 seconds, wouldn't it? So I can wait 5 minutes. I suggest probably waiting is expensive. My guess is that what it's doing is called polling, and that means it's checking every so often to see if it's gotten the reply back or something like that. So I'm guessing that it's probably expensive overhead on the TCP/IP connection. There's a lot of overhead in the database, I'm pretty sure. It's something that we'd want to avoid doing unless that was worth doing. I'm going to try to implement it. Anybody that wants to work with me on it, I'll work with you on it. I gave you the URL where I found the stuff. Some things that are not, there are some things I found to be blind alleys. One of them is the event notification service that sends you an email when some event happens, like a database shuts down or something like that. That's fine, but what I would like to do, what I really wanted to do, was to trigger, to have this happen in a trigger, and you could send a message from a trigger. So when you update the pending table, it's triggered and it sends you a message. I haven't worked out all those details yet, but I've got it sending messages. I've got it talking back and forth. So I can send a message.
Question.
Go ahead.
Well, two questions. One, you said this is possible in Oracle. Do you have this set up in Oracle that you could show us what it looks like?
Would you like to see some Oracle?
Yeah. I mean, if you've got if you have that available. But then two, so why are we trying to send the message from SQL instead of letting the trigger hand off this event to the Visual Basic to do a pop-up window to the other person playing the game and say, hey, it's your turn?
Because I can't pop up a window on your computer that I know of. I mean, if you know how to do that, I know how to pop up a window on my computer, but I don't know how I could, if you're connected and we're both connected to the same database, that doesn't mean that our Visual Basic is connected in any way.
Okay. Okay.
So I wouldn't have the ability to pop it up. I mean, I could send you an email. I could call you by cell phone, text you, I guess, but I can't. The idea being, I'm trying to effect some kind of communication such that I can tell you that you're waiting on me to do something. And so I send you a message that says, okay, I've done it. And now you can go get your information from the database and determine who the winner of the round was and all that jazz. Is that making sense?
Yes, I was kind of confused about what our premise was, but so it is that we're on two different machines, but we're using the same SQL server, so it's messaging within the same server.
And if you find it a little bit confusing, yeah, so do I. It's a little more clear in Oracle, I think. I don't know whether I can it's been a couple of years since I've done Oracle, but I think I can pull up the code for it. or I'll certainly show you the code from Oracle next week if you want to see Oracle. We can talk about it and what you have to do in Oracle. It is exactly, it does the same stuff. I think Oracle is a little bit cleaner of an interface. But you know, I don't sit here and complain about the software. It's just the software is the software, and we use the software we have. I would like to see it taught in Oracle. I don't know, the Dallas and Frisco area are more of an SQL Server market than they are Oracle. When I was teaching in Corpus Christi, we had the Army, Navy helicopter maintenance people. All of their parts were on Oracle, so they were an Oracle shop. So everybody that would get through this class and in Oracle would go out to the base and get a job. So at my college there was Del Mar College, and we were pretty well known on the base. We would give classes out there and all that stuff. Okay, that's where I want to go. Now I'll give you, let's see, I need to write up an assignment, what exactly I want to get, and I will try to get that out for you by tomorrow morning. I've gotten most of the grading done. I still have some pending from this class, but for the most part, I have it done. This class takes a little longer to grade because I have to go through code. On 1309, you just kind of run it and see how many rows you get returned. It's pretty simple. This class very seldom does anything run easily. Okay. Well, questions from the online people? Well, I will bring you some Oracle. Do you want the Oracle install files?
Sure.
Okay, well, I can download them and go through the install. I'm not sure I would recommend, unless you just happen to have a computer that you use for that kind of stuff. Oracle, like any other database, wants to be the only thing running on your computer. So I don't recommend installing Oracle on your personal computer. It is a monster. It makes SQL Server look tame. But I'll do an install here, and I'll do it online so we can go through it and see how it comes up. If you want to install the Express Edition, it's okay, it's free. The Oracle has its own Visual Basic environment with it. It's not Visual Basic, it's Oracle Forms, and they're proprietary. The nice thing about Oracle is the same language is used to program the forms as it is used to program the database. It uses a different syntax. It uses a syntax that's called Ada, also known as Pascal. And that is, so the forms, instead of using one language for Visual Basic and one language in SQL, it's got the same language all the way through it, which is nice. Okay, well, we'll wrap up there tonight. I'm not going to go a whole lot further with this particular paradigm. I think we've about run rock, paper, scissors as far as we can go with it. So we want to finish up with it. So next week, I'm going to talk about some Oracle, and then we'll work on trying to get it running asynchronously. So if you want to accept the challenge, or you can wimp out. Yeah, so you're going to wimp out, huh? Okay, I'm going to say good night all, or I'm not going to say good night all. I'm going to turn off the recording. Somebody is messaging me. Okay, yeah, Tracy's asking what it looks like using Oracle. I'm not
It's
gonna,
okay. You already answered.
yeah, I don't want to bring the whole 2,000 lines of Oracle code. I just blow everybody out of the water. I think I'll probably just bring the basic rock, paper, scissors game without splitting it into two. Learning it in one language will be bad enough. But Oracle does a lot of stuff that's makes life a lot easier for the programmer. Okay. And I'm turning off the recording.